All right, welcome to This Podcast is Making Me Thirsty. This is episode 45. Tonight we are joined by model, actress, and writer. You know her as Chloe in Friends, Linda in The Wedding Singer. You've seen her in Girls and Ray Donovan. She created the nonprofit organization, the PPP, a nonprofit healing school and teaching certificate program for youth aging out of foster care. And of course, she was Cindy in Jerry's Maid and girlfriend in the classic season 9 episode, The Maid of Seinfeld. Please welcome Angela Featherstone. Angela, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Yeah, is my sound okay too? Because I have my little headphones, but if this works, that would be great.
Yeah, it works. Works for us.
Hi,
Angela,
thanks. Happy to be here.
you sound and look great, and we're honored to have you on the show. Now, let's go to 1998. Like, what a year. I mean, you did Zero Effect with Stiller and Bill Pullman. You did The Wedding Singer with Sandler. And obviously you did Seinfeld. What can you take us back 23 years and just tell us what that year was all about?
That was 1998.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because I've actually been writing, and I publish essays sometimes, and I write essays sometimes, and I like to publish them. And I just started an essay recently that takes place predominantly in that year, like the end of 97 into 98. And yeah, I tell people all the time, I think that, 97 was pretty big. Leading into that, I think that's when I shot Friends. And I think that's probably when I shot The Wedding Singer. And anyway, so yeah, 97 going into 98. 98 was probably the best year of my career. And it was also, not to be Debbie Downer, but it also was one of the worst years of my life. But it was career-wise, it was amazing. And but I have a question for you, because you said that it was season 9 of Seinfeld.
Yeah.
But I thought they did 10 seasons.
No, 9 seasons. You were in the second to last episode, actually.
I was in the final 4. And I have a good story about that.
Yeah. That was one of our questions. Go ahead. Yeah, we'd love to hear.
I have a good story about that. It's one of my happy stories in my career. And to me, it's a really beautiful story about Hollywood. So for years, I would audition for Seinfeld. And every single time I would audition for Seinfeld, they would specifically make a point to say, we really love her. We're not going to hire her for this, but we'll have her back for something. And then a year later, 2 years later, they would bring me in for something. And again, they would say, we love her, but we're not going to hire her for this, but we're going to find her something. And the thing is that as an actress in Hollywood, you hear that every day. That is like a dime a dozen. We love her. We're going to find something for her. They're not finding anything for you. And I kind of, as you noted, I was a little bit busy, had other things going on. And all of a sudden, one day, I get a phone call that I had been aware of this sort of hoopla about the ending of Seinfeld.
Right.
And I had heard already of the final 4. And I was like, wow, that's so cool. It sounds like hockey. And it's like, it was a time, I think ER was ending or renegotiating for hundreds of millions of dollars for the final season. And Friends was dying. I think it was on the final 10, it was this moment, this epic era of comedy at NBC, and not just comedy, but, Warren Littlefield was the head of that network, and he is just a profound legend, just a genius. And I mean, probably still is. I haven't talked to him, but anyhow, this sort of time of a renaissance, really, in television at that network. And so there they were, the Seinfeld, the final 4, but again, I wasn't thinking about it. And all of a sudden I got a phone call. They want to hire you for one of the last episodes. And not only was it obviously a total thrill to be in the final 4, which I think is legendary, but also it was a story of where Hollywood actually said something they meant. I mean, and Mark Hirschfeld's not all of Hollywood, but I mean, I feel like that's important
Yeah, they
and
lived up to it.
definitely noteworthy.
Yeah, they lived up to it, right?
They really did.
That's really good.
That's a
They
great-
said something and they meant it and they followed through. And
Loyalty.
it was for nothing, no less than the final four of Seinfeld. So I got really lucky.
So, Angela, that's a great story. And I do want to ask you if you remember any of the other parts that you did try out for that you might have watched and be like, man, I would have killed on that. But did you have to try out for the play? Was there an audition? Or did Mark
I don't think I auditioned for the Maid.
So they already had seen it. No, they really were like, we got it. Finally.
I think they were. There was a sense of it. I have no memory at all of auditioning for the Maid. And there was a sense of it that it was like, we got 3 episodes left. We said we were going to hire her. Let's bring her. Let's give her this. I mean, that's really what it seemed like.
Was it palpable on the set that you could sense that this was coming to an end, that these people have been doing this for 9 years and that, it's a pretty iconic show, obviously, and they've been around. Was that at all noticeable? Was there any type of emotions yet, or are they still kind of just professional? If you remember anything about like shooting as far as that goes?
They were all crying. No.
Yeah.
I will tell you, I have a funny story about my experience on Seinfeld, and it's when people ask me like, what was it like on Seinfeld? They never seem very happy with my response. So I'll just preface it with that, because here's the truth about my experience on Seinfeld. Jerry Seinfeld had suddenly gotten like severe, he couldn't speak. He lost his voice.
Yeah, his voice is different in that episode for sure.
He got, I don't know what it was, but some kind of like a sickness that had just happened, and he literally lost his voice. Like, is that called laryngitis or something?
Yeah,
So
But they wrote that into the show, yeah.
Yeah, they did. And
he had gotten something really bad that took away his voice, literally. And so basically whatever it seemed, my experience of it was that whatever well-oiled machine had been running at that high of a level for all of those years literally went, like all the white blood cells went to Jerry and getting Jerry better. It was all about Jerry's getting his shots and the doctor and Jerry. And so that was sort of the sense of it. And really there wasn't a lot, like you didn't want to tap anybody's energy. That was my sense. It was like, I was like, hit your mark, say your line, don't drain anybody because somebody's sick and it's not good. And they needed to get that episode. And but it was also, I'll just spin into the next big experience that I had on that show that I've never had before. And I wasn't I haven't done a lot of sitcoms, but I've certainly spent a lot of time around a lot of comedians and a lot of funny people, and sort of for a while I worked, I've done like 3 or 4 movies with Dave Chappelle. I was good friends with Neil Brennan. I spent a lot of time, around the Happy Madison gang. And Norm Macdonald. I'd been to the Just Career Comedy Festival. Jeff Ross was a good friend at that. That was sort of like one of my circles of friends at that time, and or comrades anyway. I wouldn't call them maybe friends, but per se, although Neil's a friend, but it was like my peers, right?
Right.
And I have never had the experience that I had on Seinfeld, where I would take all of my experience and all of my preparation and all of my best comedy chops that I could muster in that moment, and I would run, say my line, and fucking crickets, like not a peep, not even like a pin drop. It was just like crickets, and I was like, that was like my best, like that was my Olympic best. And I mean, for real, because it's the Olympics. Being on, acting opposite Jerry Seinfeld is the fucking Olympics. Right. And so no one said a word, and Jerry goes like this. He's like, "Well," and literally the place is like in an uproar. And I was like, wait, and I tried it again, like another time. I would like really give my comedy best, and there'd be like silence, and then all of a sudden Jerry'd be like, "So," and riotous laughter. And I was like, wow, it's like there's you and your very best, and then there's a few galaxies, and then there's Jerry Seinfeld, and everyone's just waiting for him to speak.
Well, here's what I'll say. Here's what I'll say about that. They're just kissing his fanny. That's number one. But number two, all due respect, and I think that there's a lot to go into that. I'm glad you kind of unpacked that a little bit.
Yeah.
By season 9, and we agree, like the show became,
We're not big season 9
the
fans.
show became kind of
Maid is a great
cartoonish.
episode, but
The show became kind of cartoonish. Larry David left. It really had some low points, but honestly, The Maid is one of our favorite episodes. And quite frankly, we do believe you kind of stole the show in that. Like
Wow.
George,
for
like
sure.
George had
George's
some
stuff is
parts.
not good. The Lane stuff is not good at all.
Yeah, so your stuff, your line, we were talking about this earlier with Coco. It's like it was really
The way you
funny.
deliver that, Coco, she's all right. That's a great line. That's a great line in that episode.
Thanks.
And just
Yeah,
to play
so
with Jerry and everything, sophisticated.
I
keep it
did my best. That was my comedy being best in that situation for sure. I mean, it's very different than Adam, and a movie is different than a sitcom, and The Wedding Singer was a totally different experience than like season 9 of a well-oiled.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit that. Tell me some of the differences or similarities between obviously being on the set of Seinfeld. It seemed a little tense, without Larry David there. How was it with Sandler?
Oh my
Completely
God.
different.
Well, yeah, I mean, I do think in all fairness, it's not, I mean, I don't know Jerry Seinfeld. I only met him on set.
right.
So I can't really, I have, spent a fair amount of more time with Adam Sandler. And so I can't really comment on their personalities, but my sense is that my experience of Adam Sandler is that he's very, very kind and generous and present and calm and laid back.
Oh,
and
interesting.
and my very limited experience of Jerry Seinfeld is that he's
Bit
like
more
super
stiff.
super professional.
Yeah.
You know
Stiff.
what I mean? Like he's like, okay, when I used to model, there was models like me who were like smoking cigarettes and trying not to ruin their makeup, but maybe they might have just come from the bar and stayed out all night and were showing up at the studio. Maybe we
Right.
were, maybe we weren't, I don't know, but we were having fun. And there was other models who came with their makeup full done and their hair all blown out and their little bag of stockings in case you didn't like the color they had on, like professionals. And I feel
Right.
like Jerry Seinfeld is like a professional comedian. I don't imagine him like ever sitting in a room filled with like hamburger wrappers and like for days and like flicking,
Right.
through some crazy, wild kingdom of like orangutans, day 7. Like I see like, there's a lot of comedians that I can imagine easily doing that. I feel like Jerry's sort of like a PhD.
Well, it's
That's
funny.
good. That makes sense.
It's funny, Angie. We had Tawny Katayan on. I think you got a more mature Jerry. Like he had a girlfriend at that point. Season 2, he literally got Tawny Katayan the job because he wanted to ask her out. So it was a kind of a different, probably more fun-loving Jerry back in.
Do you want to know a dirty story about
Of
that?
course we do.
Yes.
I've never told anybody this before. Well, except for maybe at the time I told people. Because it was sort of like a car accident. Like you feel ashamed and guilty for looking, but at the same time you can't stop looking. And it was sort of one of those experiences for me. It was like seeing a car accident, a deadly, bloody car accident on the side of a freeway. My friends, I'm not gonna say exactly I'm going to be protective of her, but my girlfriend worked with people on the show and had told me prior to filming that here's how it goes on the show. This is a horrible story.
Okay. We only have
I
53
I
listeners.
love you. You're like, it's okay. It's okay, Angie. You tell us the dirty story, and then everybody's gonna get me too. She had told me that if between Jerry and Michael, what's his name?
Michael
Kramer?
Richards? Kramer?
Kramer, yeah.
Michael Richards, yeah.
Michael Richards. Between Jerry and Michael Richards, they would decide if they liked the girl or not, the female guest. And if Jerry liked the girl, then of course Jerry got the girl, because it's the Jerry Seinfeld show. But if Jerry didn't like the girl and he passed, then Michael would go for it, like that. They sort of had some like thing. So I was like, okay, cool, heads up. Like, and again, when I got to the show, they were all focused on making Jerry be able to stand up and be well and get the show done. And so none of that, like there was no flirting, there was nothing absolutely inappropriate at all. It was literally like performing a really amazing surgery. And then about a week after I was on the show, I was like, well, nothing happened. Like, Jerry was sick. I'd kind of forgotten about her warning. And I get a phone call. I get a message, at that time I had, like, where if you called my number, I had an answering service. So it would go to like a really nice lady who'd be like, hello, Featherstone residents. And they could call, and then she would call me and say, or I would call in, I don't remember, but I even had a pager, I think. But anyway, I got a message that Michael Richards had called my answering machine. And I was like, oh, I guess Jerry didn't like me, because I knew the story. And I never answered at all. I think that even if he had been like Clark Gable, I would have not responded, because who wants to be second choice? Not that I wanted Jerry to ask me out, but or that he would have. It's just, that's horrible once you know that information. It's like, hey, not only are you a loser and first round passed you by, but you're a second round draft pick in a league of two. And the second team is Michael Richards. That's a pretty big shift.
Kramer liked the Maid. All right.
Well, your number one draft pick for us, Angela.
Oh, thank you. Is that a horrible story?
No, that's a great story, and
Okay.
and definitely.
For the record, for all the cancel culture people,
Nothing,
very clear. Nobody did anything wrong. There was no inappropriate behavior. Someone just called my number.
He could have just called to say hi.
He could have just wanted to get a cup of coffee. That's it.
That's
Who knows?
Maybe I left something on set and he was trying to return it. Anyway, he wasn't. He was clearly coming after me, but
So we talked about this right before we hopped on. Kind of we deem Seinfeld the best comedy ever. I know you probably have an opinion about that. I know you played a huge part on Friends, which some people think is a great comedy as well. Tell me some of the memories and kind of differences and similarities between the two shows. I mean, it sounds like the Seinfeld experience, like very professional. It was kind of the end of the line. And you were kind of on Friends, kind of at its, I guess, its peak, right? And it's kind of one of the most talked about episodes. But maybe touch on that a little bit and kind of just settle the score for us. What's the better comedy, Seinfeld or Friends?
Oh God. Well, I do think that's it's like comparing apples and oranges. It really is. It really is. Like the experience on the set, they're so divergent. Is that the right word?
Oh
They're
wow.
so different. Friends, was like there were so many of them, and the writing crew were just like, it just felt like they could have been making cookies, but they just happened to be writing comedy. Like it just was very loving and very familial. And Jim Burrows directed that episode, which also felt kind of amazing. I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud that I got to be in the final four. I'm very proud that I got to be in the Wedding Singer. I'm very proud that I was on Girls, which we can talk about too. But I am very proud that I got to work with Jim Burrows. He's a genius. But what happened with Friends for me was, I was at the craft, so I'd done the rehearsal, but I had, again, like those. I think Friends was my first sitcom ever. So, yeah, I've only done like, I think I've only done like two real sitcoms, Seinfeld and Friends, and then Girls is like a comedy. But so it was my first experience on a sitcom, and I didn't really have like sitcom chops, and so everything was kind of new to me, and I was mesmerized, but like I guess like mesmerized is the right word. Like I was doing a rehearsal, and Burroughs, and like there's all the scaffolding and the crew and the electricians and the grips, and people are moving, and all the the boys are there, and Schwimmer and Perry and LeBlanc, and everyone's there, and Jim Burrows looks over and he goes, "Hey, move over 1 inch." And I was like, okay, like, wow, I've done like really intense dramas with like really intense directors, and no one's ever said like move over 1 inch. Like that's really precise.
Right.
And so, and I, in my mind, I was like, I guess my initial instinct was sure, but 1 inch isn't really going to make that much of a difference. And I moved over 1 inch, and I swear to God, their jokes flew better.
It's crazy.
And I was like, wow, how did he just do that? He had me move 1 inch, and suddenly the joke was funnier. So I was kind of like, wow, this is other level. The physicalness, the yeah, whatever the word is, like the physical element of comedy, and how placement and just all of that physical is very different than just being a stand-up comic and telling jokes, or very different than my limited experience, which is basically just being a loud version of me, which was what I basically did for comedy most of the time. But so Friends was really a big learning experience. But so what happened on Friends was we were getting ready to film. It was Friday, film night. And I was at the craft service table, and Jim Burrows had been very, he's directing an episode. He's not there to like be my friend. So he's like, move 1 inch, don't talk, say this, do that, look over there. And then I'm standing by the craft service table, and I'm like bending over to get something, and I can feel someone walk past me, and I look up and I see it's Jim Burrows, and he goes, "This is your big break, kid. Don't fuck it up." And I was like, I was like, oh God, I'm gonna fuck it up. But so,
well, he's a genius. I mean,
he's a master.
Yeah, it's Cheers, and I mean,
He's a master.
Incredible.
I'm such a dork. Like, I'm the girl who memorized most of Pee-wee's Big Adventure and would recite it and act it out all the time. So I am such a dork that a lot of the time in those moments with masters like that of comedy, I'm geeking out on the science of comedy.
Right. I mean, your first ever, from what I could tell anyway, is Kids in the Hall. You were on Kids in the Hall.
I was an extra, but
you were an extra, but hey, you were there. You were watching some comedic
I
geniuses
was
at work.
there.
I mean,
I got
I'm assuming because you grew up in Canada, am I right? Or at least you were there during that time
I
with Kids in
grew
the
up
Hall?
in Canada, but I had left and lived in New York and overseas, and then
With
came
modeling and
back
then came back. Okay.
to Toronto. Well, to Winnipeg originally. I went from New York in '89 and went back to Winnipeg, got my GED, and went to college for a year, and then my friend was in Toronto from because I started out my modeling career in Toronto,
Hmm.
and my friend from there got sick, and so I went back to Toronto for a year to be with him while he was dying, and during that year, I ended up hanging out with Joe Forrestal, who Lauren Michaels had sent to Toronto to manage to show run Kids in the Hall. And so I had a lot of friends there who were connected and the cool kids and the funny kids, and they all were hanging out with Joe, and so I started hanging out with Joe, and then I said I want to be an actress, and he said, well, you can be an extra on Kids in the Hall. And so I was, and I became friends with
What do we got?
Scott.
Friends.
Scott. Okay.
What's his name? Not Scott Foley.
No, Dave Foley.
Dave Foley. Dave Foley. I became friends with Dave Foley for not then, but later I was friends with him. And I was at Dave Foley's house once. I was in Toronto doing a movie, and I went over to Dave Foley's house, and he had just moved back and to Toronto, and Mike Myers came over. It was me and Dave Foley and Mike Myers hanging out,
Sounds
and
like a
we
good
were
time.
playing around because I kept and I forget what Dave had just done at that time, but he was on that Spin City. What was it
Yeah.
called?
Well, no, it was News Radio.
News Radio.
Yeah, he was big. That was a big
Can
show.
you edit out all the parts where I sound dumb? Because I am a hit or miss girl.
No, this
and,
is great. This is great.
When I land, but the rest
So
of
what
the
year?
time.
What year is this? Hanging out with Mike
That's
Myers.
probably like late '90s, right, or mid '90s? '90s.
This would have probably been late '90s. This was probably. I was in. Oh, you know what I was doing in Toronto? I was in Toronto for the NHL awards. I had to present the Vezina Award to Dominic Hasek, and so
Great
I was
call.
there.
Oh,
and
the goaltender, yeah.
so I think that it was probably the end of '98. I'm guessing.
And
So
all-
anyway, and I kept the best part though is that so I'm sitting there. Dave's like a comedy star, Kids in the Hall, News Radio. I think he was in some big like movie like Toy Story or something. He was like some famous voice. And then there's Mike Myers, who's Mike Myers. And so I kept talking about The Wedding Singer. I would just be like, yeah, well, I remember when I was on The Wedding Singer, and they actually played along. We had a really funny time. Me acting like I was, I was amongst my peers, which I clearly wasn't.
So speaking of The Wedding Singer, right? If I had to say what you're best known for, right? I'm just top of my head. I'm thinking Wedding Singer, Friends, and Seinfeld. And what's interesting is you look completely different in each of those, right? You have that 80s look, obviously, in The Wedding Singer. Chloe kind of had that just short hair, and obviously the Maid, looked like a knockout. But what
You just love the Maid.
I love the Maid. I love the Maid.
You're like, you were ugly and everything, but not the Maid.
No, that's not
Maid,
true at
nobody
all.
touches
No,
the
no, no,
Maid.
no.
Did I say ugly? Nah.
No.
But I mean,
Just
But you're
different
like,
looks.
yeah, you were like 80s, and you had hair and the other thing, but boy,
Angela,
Maid.
that Van Halen T-shirt. Come on, nothing better. But what do you get stopped on the street the most about of those three?
Don't, hey, lady, move. Not in LA. You don't get stopped. Where are you guys?
We're in New York, just close to the city, suburb out there in New York.
So New York people stop me. They don't stop me on the street, but they nod and they recognize me in New York. In LA, nobody recognizes you. I mean, unless you're like Gene Simmons, they recognize you at the deli. But like, yeah, I don't have that experience here. But New York people are so lovely. But I think that New Yorkers probably recognize me from Seinfeld. I'm gonna guess. But people don't really. It's funny because I've done a wide range of things. I've done
I mean,
um
Con Air is a blockbuster action movie. I mean, that had to be
and I did
completely different than like 200 Cigarettes or, even The Wedding Singer, right? Or
well see, but that's the thing is that the fans that love 200 cigarettes are very different than the fans that love Friends
right,
now.
right.
And the fans that love Seinfeld, like I was telling someone I was gonna do this podcast and they were like, oh, is that what you're most famous for is Seinfeld? And I was like, it depends your age group and your
Right,
gender.
I can see that.
And
Yeah.
because if you asked a 17-year-old girl right now who they would like to talk to, the maid, from The Wedding Singer, or Chloe, they're fucking obsessed with Chloe. They are obsessed. It was and also
And what about girls too? I'm guessing that's probably that same demo, right? From
see,
the
I
same
no, they no girls was mostly 50 and up
older, yeah, okay.
men.
Oh, really?
But yeah, I was surprised to hear that was their number one demographic. Um, not really surprised,
Sure.
not shell shocked
Right, right.
that 50-year-old men want to watch a show called
Called
Girls
Girls,
with a
right.
bunch of nubile, beautiful girls, women running around naked having sex. But I thought that it would be women in their 24 to 35 or something. But yeah, no, and I think that I love Girls because I was and am a huge fan of Lena Dunham, Jenny Connor, Eileen Landris. That I think that trifecta of women are just genius and masters. And and that also had a story. My friend. Can I tell you my story? Do you have time for
Of course, yeah, we
my
got all night.
girls
Yeah,
my girls tidbit? So I was living in an apartment building not far from here, and my neighbor was moving out. My friend Michelle Nader, who created Two Broke Girls, she was moving out, and she said, "Listen, my friend Jenny Connor is going to move into my apartment. So when I move out, so I'm going to give her your number. I want you to be nice to her, look after her." Like, no problem. We were a really close knit group of people that lived in that building for a very long time. And it was like Jack Black lived there, Sharon Lawrence lived there. There was like Cameron Diaz lived there. It was, oh, you know who else? The Partridge Family, Susan Day. I used to see her in the laundry room all the time. And I was like, this is so weird. Like, life and like TV and reality. It's so
right.
weird that I'm doing laundry with Susan Day from the Partridge Family, who I grew up watching. So anyhow, I said, sure, of course, give her my number. And I'm, texting with Jenny. What do you need? Her daughter came to my apartment and was like asking about my books and da da da. And then she says, oh, my friend Lena is going to move into the apartment across the hall from you. I was like, oh, okay, that's so cool. I had no idea. I'd never heard of Tiny Furniture. I had no idea of this story of what was happening. I was in a bit of a cloud at that time. And so anyhow, I just become friends with them. I'm texting them and we're tweeting each other. And I tweeted, I texted them, or I texted Jenny, or I tweeted Jenny. I can't remember, I DM'd her something. And I said something to her, and she said, you must be psychic. Lena and I were just talking about you. We're going to write something for you on the show. Now, I had not, as I used to say, like, I couldn't get arrested at that time. And then I like to add, I actually could get arrested. I did get arrested. As a matter of fact, I did get arrested. But like, that was basically, I couldn't even stick to a cliche. I had people were not lining up to hire me. I think my last job offer had been Wrestling with the Stars, where they wanted Angela Featherstone, Linda from The Wedding Singer, to be on Wrestling with the Stars, and I was like, okay, no, like this is my bottom. I'm not gonna work unless it's something that I like, and unless it's with people that I like, um, and something that I'm proud to do. And so I haven't worked a lot since then, but there was two things. Like the role on Ray Donovan was written for me, and the role on Girls was written for me. And so I feel, as you can imagine, profoundly honored. But again, it was another example of people keeping their word and being like really nice to. I don't make any difference. I don't have big TVQ. So hiring me is, it's a mitzvah. It's really nice. It's a gift.
That's
sort
great
of,
to hear. And I think
I mean,
what we've
I
learned
love
about
hearing stories
from
like that.
you is just a story of like redemption and belief and never giving up. And I think there is good in this world. I think all you do as an actress, an actor, and a writer is great. But I think the biggest impact you've made is kind of what you do in the nonprofit, and we just want to take our hat off to you that
Thanks.
helping those youth, right, get out of foster care as they age. We know it's a difficult thing. We know you went through that, and we just want to give you a minute here if you want to talk about what's next, at least in that role of your life.
Oh, sure. Well, that's really sweet. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for mentioning it. Thank you for mentioning it earlier, and just creating space for it. Yeah, basically what happened was I've been writing screenplays the last couple of years. My essay writing sort of transferred into screenwriting, and I've been doing that, and I love how hard it is to do it, and I love the experience of expanding myself. Um, but the part about hustling in the industry and sort of like what it takes to be a screenwriter in the business part has been very challenging for me, because I think at my core, I just love being happy. I love nature. If you follow me on Instagram, 90% of my posts are like rabbits and mice, like stars and clouds. And so I think I like when things are really clear and there's really clear rules. And I wasn't experiencing that. And so last year, when everyone was starting podcasts and the world was crumbling, or uprising, or however you want to define it, when something was being created, I had a moment where, you can't leave your apartment, and there's COVID everywhere outside the door. And then there was a lot of protests that were happening in my neighborhood, and also there was windows, the National Guard were nearby, and I have family in Nova Scotia, and I was at this sort of like really profound moment of pressure. I really felt like there was a lot of pressure on me. Like, where do you want to go? Where do you want to go? Who do you want to be? What do you want to do? And I kind of was like, I think I'm okay to cash in my chips. I'll just like get rid of everything and go back to Nova Scotia and live a happy life with my family. They're new to me because I only met them like 16 years ago, but I have a lovely family in Nova Scotia, sisters and nieces and nephews and cousins and a father and his wife, and like, what the fuck am I doing in Los Angeles? Have you ever been to Nova Scotia? It's like it's utopian. And so I kind of was like, all right, what am I gonna do? And all of a sudden, this something just kind of happened to me, and it was like, you can't, like, I couldn't give up. I couldn't be done. I still had too much to do, but I was like, what do you have to do? And I kind of had this moment where it's like, all right, I'm going to create a non-profit healing school that is based on the healing paradigm that I have intrinsically created for myself over the last 11 years as I healed my trauma from growing up in an abusive family and then being in foster care and having all of that subsidiary trauma that comes with being in foster care. And then the trauma of I technically aged out of foster care, but really what happened was I convinced the judge to emancipate me when I was 17 and a half because I did not like foster care at all. I hated the group homes so much. And I knew that I was not for that world of permanent long-term incarceration. And so I got 3 jobs and I was always going AWOL, which is like, so you can see that I've only been in foster care, under a year, but I've AWOL'd every week, which means you, by the way, you catch a case because you get a warrant out for your arrest and then you go, it's this whole foster care to juvie jail pipeline that keeps happening over and over, which is how you end up easily in prison when you age out of foster care because you've already got a massive criminal record because you're going AWOL from a place that's fucking horrible.
Horrible. Yeah,
any conscious, civilized human being would AWOL from these group homes. The ones I was in, they're horrible. And so I figured I would save these kids years of drinking whiskey and get raped because I had, obviously, like many kids from foster care, I had achieved. Clearly, foster care does not equal a life sentence. I was, on the cover of many magazines, traveled all over the world on all of these amazing shows, incredible opportunities in life, but ultimately I did not have the ability to expand with life as life expands, right? You keep doing good work, you keep showing up, you keep working hard, your life will get bigger. I did not have that capacity. And so when things were going great, I was great. When things started to, whenever something bad happened, I would crumble, which you need sustainability. You need an inner, like a foundation. You need to have your life that's predicated on things other than money or success, prestige. So when things got tough, I took a hit. And I just thought, I now know that all of these healing modalities work because they've worked for me. And what used to be trapped trauma is now life force. And so why don't I take what I've done? And within 2 days, I had my whole staff. Within 2 days, every single one of my healers that I've worked with in the last 10 years said yes. I had my board, which includes 2 of my practitioners, my lifelong best friend, not lifelong, but she's been my acting coach. She's Jennifer Aniston's acting coach. She's a genius acting coach. She's coached everyone, Lee Kilton Smith. And so I love her because she was on every single one of these shows with me, every single one of my movies. I never had to set foot on a set ever since the day I met her without knowing that I was a talented actress because of her. So she's really the one commonality behind all of my performances, including and not limited to 200 Cigarettes. But she really, she was on set with me for that movie. But so she's on my board. 2 of my healers are on my board. And Sia, the singer, is on my board because she's a lovely, generous person. And Anthony Edwards is on my advisory board. He's a lovely friend.
ER, right? ER, right? Anthony Edwards?
Yeah, Anthony, yeah. And also, a couple of other things too.
Well, Angela...
It's incredible.
Guess
it's
what?
An incredible story.
This podcast is making me thirsty. It's gonna make a nice little donation tonight to the PPP.
Oh well, thanks. Thank you. Yeah. So that's my. I think we're wrapping up, but yeah, that's my healing school, and we're just getting started. And I would like to. We're going to open up a school here, hopefully this fall or early next year, and then I'd like to take it across the country so that every city can have these healing schools.
That's incredible. I mean, it's so good to hear these kind of stories. And I love how when you had the idea and you went to the people to help you, you're saying in 2 days it was all set up. Like those kind of things. I love when that happens, when it's just like it just clicks and you're you
Yeah,
had the
and
people to
my
ask, and they were
rabbi,
the ones who jumped on it.
exactly, and my rabbi, Mordecai Finley, and his wife, Mirav Finley, came on board, came on the advisory board, and immediately got me a lawyer. So within 3 months, all my bylaws were done, and we had submitted to our fight for 501c3 status, and then we got expedited. We got it in 3 days from the state of California. So it's been like community effort, but yeah, it's one of those things, kind of like Mark Hirschfeld and kind of like Jenny Connor,
Right.
where people just do good work and you get to be the recipient of that, of their generosity. And I guess, what I try to bring every time is just my best self as best I can.
It sounds like too. It kind of all stemmed from that decision you made, where it was like, I'm only going to do what I want to do, and I have to just be happy with that, and be happy with myself, and not worry about what the next thing I'm getting. And then it all starts coming to you, and those people that were loyal to you from the start showing up. And yeah, it's an incredible story. This has been great, though. We really appreciate it, Angela.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Got anything else, O'Hara?
No, Angie, thanks so much. This is it's been an honor having you on the show. We love your work.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. You guys, I think you guys are great. And I hope you guys do really, really, really well because you're cool.
Thank you, Angela. We appreciate it. Have a good
Right.
night. Thank you
We're
so
done?
much. Yeah,
We're
we're done.
done.
You can relax. Thank you.
Thank
Have a great
you.
night. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. It was wonderful. Thank you.